Let's talk about what Leon Panetta is actually saying. He is openly talking about Israel's ambitions. Why would he be doing such a thing? Is this a strategy to warn Iran to back down or face consequences?
Well, I think it's certainly true that the U.S. administration over the last several years, both Obama and Bush, have wanted to keep the option of using force on the table. And since the Israeli government has been engaged in, I think it's fair to say, a degree of psychological warfare through its statements to journalists, its statements to to American officials, essentially what's happening here is the American government is using the Israeli psychological warfare to keep this option on the table, even though the United States appears not to favor such an option, in the hopes that it will convince Iran to do what it has not done, which is give up its nuclear program. And unfortunately, I don't think it's working.
Jamie, is there a downside to this? I mean, all of this talk here, as this escalates, could it actually push Iran to behave in an opposite way that they want to, and to actually move forward faster in their nuclear program?
Well, that's certainly one risk. Iran is doing and pursuing psychological warfare of its own, threatening, for example, to shut down the oil flow of the world through the so-called Straits of Hormuz, through which much of the oil comes. And it's possible, as you say, that Iran will conclude that, as in the case of Pakistan and the case of India and particularly the case of North Korea, the best defense against a possible attack is to accelerate its program, brandish its nuclear weapons, and say we've already arrived, and an attack would yield a nuclear response, and nobody would dare do that. So there are some serious risks of ratcheting up the threat.
And Jamie, we have been down this path before. It was back in 1981. Israel destroyed a nuclear reactor in Iraq because they thought that was a threat. Iran is a lot more powerful than Iraq was back then. Could we actually see an all-out war from this scenario?
Well, the example that's most recent in the minds of particularly the Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, who would be crucial to such a decision, is his decision in 2007 or 6, a few years ago, to destroy Syria's nuclear reactor. And they sent in a combination of aircraft and, I believe, ground troops, destroyed the reactor. And what they've been telling the outside world, journalists and the United States, is, look, Syria didn't respond, so we shouldn't assume that Iran would respond. Unfortunately, Syria and Iran are very, very different cases. Iran is a country that showed how brutal and difficult it can be when it cracked down on its own people, killing hundreds of people and suppressing thousands. So I don't think this will be a cakewalk, anything like Iraq or Syria. I think this is a major step if it happens, and could be a major confrontation.